Joining us for more on this is Tyson Barker. He's a former State Department official in the Biden and Obama administrations. Welcome, Tyson. Why is USAID among the first targets for cost cutting by the Trump administration?
Well, international development in the United States has always been something that has, although massive return on investment, has not been an area that the American people necessarily see as urgent as other forms of government support. So if you look at the polling over years, international development assistance has always been something that Americans are willing to shrink the budget on. That said, that there are a lot of misperceptions on what USAID and international development does. It is the greatest return on investment in America's arsenal to support U.S. national interest. As your program mentioned, it's less than 1% of the budget, $40 billion, as opposed to around upwards of $800 billion for the Pentagon. And for that, the U.S. is able to sustain not only millions of lives, but advance American national interest in countries around the globe. I know this personally from my experience in Ukraine over the past 2 years.
So what does the suspension of USAID services mean for America's image around the world?
Well, it breaks the seal on trustworthiness and credibility of the United States and U.S. support in international development going forward. Obviously, a lot of contractors working in the healthcare sector, in childcare, in nutrition, in demining, as was mentioned, will always have the question of whether or not assistance will remain in place that the United States provides. The 90-day moratorium, there are two questions here. One is about the funding access, and the other is about USAID as an institution. Both have deep statutory mandates in Congress. The funding that has been allocated has been exhaustively negotiated with the appropriators in Congress and approved by both parties. I know this from my experience on Ukraine. Not only the top line envelopes for something like demining in Ukraine, which has helped demine an area the size of Belgium, but also the more specific line items have been negotiated with both parties and approved by both parties in Congress. The question that funders are going to have in the future and partners is, okay, you have a process in place, but can we necessarily trust this, or do we need to get a second partner to verify or to make sure that our funding doesn't get cut capriciously?
And Donald Trump, meanwhile, is saying that Elon Musk has the authority to direct this kind of cost cutting that we're looking at. The Democratic opposition says Musk doesn't have that authority. Who is right?
Well, they're both going to have arguments that they're going to bring to bear in courts. There are going to be an avalanche of court cases, both in terms of programmatic funding and jobs, contracts, the existence of USAID as an institution. These are all independently created and verified by Congress, and those will be fought out in the courts. That said, a Supreme Court decision last year gave the president broad immunity and authority to act under what he, and it's always been a he up to this point, considers consistent with his presidential mandate, and has a lot of immunity to do what he feels is necessary. So even if this is an extra-legal act that Musk and his DOGE deputies are doing, it's going to take a while to adjudicate in courts, and then it could be provided, the cover of the presidential immunity and also the pardon power.
Speaking of court cases, federal workers have now already filed lawsuits to stop Musk and Trump. What legal arguments do they have?
Well, a lot of this is based on contract law. So both in terms of the programs and partners and vendors, they have contracts with the U.S. government that do have potential possibilities for for opt-outs or for suspension, but those have not been necessarily activated in these cases. They've been done in a very haphazard way. And when it comes to staffing and personnel, one of the reasons that good very, very qualified Americans look to join the United States government is because of the certainty and legal protections that employment with the U.S. government provides.
Right.
And so have very, very strong civil service and especially foreign service unions. Those will be, basically bringing these cases to court. It's not necessarily sure that this is going to end in the favor of the administration.
We'll leave it there for the moment. Tyson Barker, thanks for joining us today.